Yo, what's up, guys? Thanks for coming back and listening to me talk some more about NFL. Last week's episode was a big one. It was a long one, an hour and a half. But it was filled with all the future bets that I've placed for the upcoming season, along with all my fact findings, stats, trends, intel that I've gathered to help me support those selections that I made. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully I was able to open some eyes to a few players or teams that may have been overlooked. Hopefully you all tailored some of the selections I was talking about. Moving on to this week's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the NFC division by division, team by team, basically going through key transactions, roster moves, the good and the bad, along with a few other little bits of key intel on those teams that I found while doing some research. And then I'll give a short opinion on how I think things are going to pan out in that specific division. So let's get into this one. I'm going to start off at the top of the compass. So I'm going to start off with the NFC North, then East, South, and then end on the West. And we're going to be going through the divisions in order of last season's standings. So we're going to start off with the NFC North and the current NFC North champions, the Detroit Lions. Now they had a decent off-season. Managed to keep Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator. He's one of the main reasons why they were the fifth best offense, averaging 27 points per game. He was up for a candidate for quite a few head coach jobs, so it was a good thing that they managed to keep him. They managed to rework Goff, St. Brown, Sewell as well. Their contracts, extended them all long term. Goff threw second most passing yards, fourth most passing touchdowns. St. Brown, he caught 119 passes, and that tied second most in the NFL in 2013-23, and the third most in a single season in Lions history. And Sewell as well, he ranked as the highest offensive lineman last season. So three key reworked contracts there. No sort of major additions on offense, but Jameson Williams is expected to take a bigger role. The Lions moved on from Josh Reynolds. He moved to Denver, but Jameson did miss 11 games due to injury in his rookie year, and he's had 4 game suspension as well. But he proved his ceiling is high. He scored a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown in the NFC Championship game. Defensively, they managed to sign tackle DJ Reader as well. He had a 11.5 quarterback pressure rating. Traded a third-round pick for cornerback Carlton Davis from the Bucks, and they also traded for another cornerback, Robertson, from the Raiders. Added 2 more cornerbacks in the draft. Traded up actually for one of them, Arnold. He ranked as PFF's 14th best player in the draft. He led the SEC in interceptions and pass breakups last season. Improved secondary, who ranked 30th in coverage grade, and improved defense, who allowed a touchdown on 23% of drives in 2023. So they managed to boost their secondary, and they made some good moves in that area. Addressed obviously key needs. Very good off-season, improving the team. Lost minimal key players, and figures. As I said, Ben Johnson stayed as well. So in terms of acquisitions, they played a very good off-season. After going 3-13-1 in 2021, they've now gone 21-13 since. So that's obviously a big improvement, and that's due to their draft picks in the past couple of years, as well as adding crucial players as well. So last season they actually had a 12-5 season, which is obviously very, very impressive. One of the best in the league last year. They actually managed to clinch the division for the first time since 1993. Another fun fact as well is the Lions have never won back-to-back divisions, so that'll be on their minds this season. They'll be wanting to do that for the first time. So the Lions became only the second team in history to to have 4 players with 10 or more touchdowns from scrimmage. So they had 4 players, 10 or more touchdowns. St. Brown, Sam Laporta both had 10. Jahmyr Gibbs had 11, and David Montgomery had 13. So they're skill players. St. Brown, wide receiver 1, Laporta, tight end 1. Very, very good in the passing game. Gibbs and Montgomery, double-headed back. Double-headed backfield. I mentioned them in my future bets as well. Gibbs, I'm very high on this year. This season, Lions are actually favourites in 13 games, and statistically, they have the 11th hardest schedule in 2024. So that's a good and a bad thing at the same time. Last season went 4-2 in NFC North matchups. That again will need to, if they can't improve it, that's sort of their minimum. They can't really lose many games against this division. It can punish them. So again, favourites for the NFC North. If they continue their offensive prowess as they have been, and their defense improves, like the way they've made some key additions, they could make it back to the NFC Conference game in the playoffs. And again, they've never won it back to back, so that'll be a key thing for them this season as well. So that's the Detroit Lions. Second place in the NFC North was Green Bay Packers. They had a record of 9-8 last season. Managed to get into the playoffs. Key roster moves: they managed to re-sign Keshawn Nixon after a solid year on special teams. He's one player they really, really wanted to keep. He was the first player to re-sign as well. So re-signed Kenny Clark to a contract extension. Reconstructed Preston Smith as well to make cap space for new signings. One of those new signings was Xavier McKinney. He improved their safety position right off the bat. He ranked as one of the best safeties. He was first in coverage as well last season. Had a decent draft as well. Drafted Cooper at linebacker to fill the void left by Campbell. Top 5 linebacker prospect. Added Josh Jacobs as well. Packers actually traded fan favourite Aaron Jones to the Vikings of all teams, but did manage to add Josh Jacobs. In my opinion, at first I was a bit bitter about it, but in my opinion, that is an improvement. When you look at what he's been able to do and what his sort of skill set, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He has led the NFL in rushing yards a few seasons ago. He's rushed for 1,000+ yards in 3 out of 5 seasons. Jacobs is younger, potentially improves the running back position from Aaron Jones. Running backs in Green Bay only scored 4 touchdowns last year. Josh Jacobs scored 6 on his own. He scored 4 or more actually in all 5 seasons, and he averages 9.2 per season. So if you look at it like that is a very big improvement. Not an addition, but Watkins and the Packers have hired a team to help with hamstring issues for Christian Watson, and it's reportedly worked as well. So if he stays healthy, it could be like a new signing if he can stay a full season at wide receiver. Activated Zach Tom as well, who was ranked as the 3rd best right tackle in 2023. He's the only Packers lineman with a rating over 60, and he actually had a 78.8. So he's key as well, getting him back on offensive line for Jordan Love's pass protection. Talking about Jordan Love, he actually threw 18 touchdowns to 1 interception in his final 7 games. He threw a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio on the season, and he ended with a top 10 quarterback rating. Not many people were high on him last year, myself included, and he actually proved everyone wrong with that kind of performance. So, and again, no wide receiver 1, no problem. Jordan Love threw to 16 different players. 9 had over 200 receiving yards. 6 had 30 or more receptions. That's not including Christian Watson. So wide receiver 1 had 28. So he was able to spread the ball around. He was able to be confident in whoever he's throwing the ball to. He threw the 7th best 4,159 pass yards and the 2nd most passing touchdowns with 32. And he also added 4 more while rushing as well. He finished 2nd in air yards, 2nd in the red zone attempt, 2nd in most red zone touchdowns, and he had 18 touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. So the Packers proved that they can get the ball into the red zone, and then they can prove they can score as well, which was a big concern in the off-season last season. So hopefully Love can replicate his form from 2023 and can continue the legacy of the Green Bay organisation, producing quarterback talent that can be leaders for many years. The Packers were actually the youngest team last season, and also the youngest team to win a playoff game since the 1970 merger. This season, however, they are expected to have a younger team again, so they will be the youngest team in the league for the second straight, with a team that was younger than last year as well. They need Love to continue last season's form. The new additions need to improve the team in specific positions. McKinney needs to stay a solid safety, for instance, and hopefully the offensive line improves and bonds during the off-season. That is my only concern for the Packers is the offensive line. But all things considered, I think they've had a very, very good off-season, and I think they can push as well for potentially challenging for this division. On to the Minnesota Vikings. They finished third. They had a 7-10 record last season. They actually lost quarterback one, Kirk Cousins, as he's moved to Atlanta, and they also lost Hunter as well, who was a key part on their defense for a number of years. With that news, though, they did manage to draft JJ McCarthy, won the national championship with Michigan last year. They also drafted Turner from Alabama, who was one of the top draft. He was one of the top edge prospects in the draft. They signed Greenard from the Texans. He had 14 sacks last season, so that could hopefully fill the void left by Hunter. They signed Van Ginkel from the Finns. He was tied fourth for the most tackles with 48 solo tackles. Obviously signed Aaron Jones from Green Bay. He started slow last year. He had a few injuries, but he ended the season very, very well, and he had 5 straight games with 100 plus rushing yards. So he's obviously a good addition to the team. Also signed Sam Darnold as well to, I'd say, to compete with the quarterback one position. JJ McCarthy's not guaranteed to start, neither is Sam Darnold, but it's expected that Sam Darnold will start at quarterback one. Last season they were the 6th worst team for quarterback pressures. 32% was their quarterback pressure. But they did, however, manage to get the 13th best overall defense. So not getting to the quarterback as much as they'd like to didn't necessarily stop them from being a top half of the league defense. Tough year last year for them. They lost Justin Jefferson to injuries. Kirk Cousins was out after week 1, and they still managed to 7 wins, 3rd place finish in the division. They actually went 2-4 against NFC North opponents, which obviously can't happen if they want to contend for this division. Addison was a good addition. He was a good player last season. He's struggling with legal issues. Makes him an unknown into 2024. He is expected to get a small suspension of 3 or 4 games, I believe. TJ Hawkinson is also out for the start of the season, recovering from an injury suffered last year. And to add on top of that, they've got the 6th hardest schedule. They actually have to play Giants, 49ers, Texans, the Packers and the Jets all before week 6 bye. So it doesn't exactly start well for them. Their season could be over before it begins if they don't get a few wins there. Like I said, added a lot of new faces, which could and should be an improvement to the team. My only issue is the quarterback situation. You've got one of the best wide receivers in Justin Jefferson. In my opinion, you've just got to use him. You can't not use him. So which quarterback would be better suited in offense? JJ McCarthy he's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he was in a run-heavy Michigan team. Will he be able to use and utilise all skill players, or will Sam Darnold be able to win the job and keep the team playing at a high level? Having that experience in the NFL, there's too many unknowns for me to back the Minnesota Vikings this year. And finally, Chicago Bears. They also had a 7-10 record last year, and to be honest, that sounds a lot better than what people are making out. People made out that they had a very, very bad year last year. But 7-10, it isn't the end of the world. But they did finish last in the division. Couldn't push for the playoffs or even contend for the division. But they obviously moved on from Justin Fields. Darnell Mooney as well is gone. Also moved on from Foreman. But in my opinion, they improved on all three of those positions. Firstly, they managed to re-sign Johnson at cornerback, lockdown corner, 4 interceptions, which was tied 5th in the league. Re-signed Ngakwe, I think that's how you say it, I'm pretty sure it is. He was injured last season, so getting him back will obviously be a big boost as well. Now, they signed DeAndre Swift, and he rushed for a career high 1,049 yards last year with the Eagles, which was 5th most in the NFL. Signed Keenan Allen, pairing him with DJ Moore. It already sounds scary. DJ Moore had a career high in receiving yards last season with over 1,200 yards, and Keenan Allen also ended with over 1,200 yards, and he set a single season reception record for the Chargers last year before leaving. Managed to sign Kevin Byard and Gerald Everett as well for depth in those positions. Obviously, the big one was drafting Caleb Williams first overall, number 1 prospect, 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, expected to go straight into that quarterback 1 position and lead the team. Drafted Rome Odunze as well. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving years. He also had, he had 1,145 and 7 touchdowns in 22, and then he had 1,640 and 13 touchdowns in 2023, so improved on 2022 quite drastically as well. And again, adding him to Keenan Allen and DJ Moore is already, that was very, very scary. I'm going to say look out for Rome Odunze as well for Offensive Player of the Year. If it's not Caleb Williams, he could have a very big impact on this team. The last 8 games of the year, they won 5 games after defense allowed the fewest points to opponents, with averaging 17. So they actually started the year very, very poorly and ended it very, very well. They found that groove towards the end of the season, and they also ended first in rush defense against the run, but they also ended dead last in sacks. So there's a very big contrast on offense to defense and things like that. So moving on to Williams again, he's the only college quarterback in the 21st century to throw for 30 or more touchdowns, run for 10 or more touchdowns, and have 5 or fewer interceptions in multiple college seasons. He was also the first top 5 draft pick quarterback coming into the league with 2 receivings that had 1,200 yards the year prior. So he's set himself up very, very well. Well, the Bears have set him up very, very well for a successful season. They've done their best to surround him with quality skill players. DeAndre Swift, obviously, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze as well. It obviously helps again that the Bears have the 3rd easiest schedule. They went 2-6 in 1 possession games last year, and they actually also went 1-7 in away games. That obviously needs to improve. If they improve that statistic, then they could well push to challenge for this division this year. The downside for that part is they play 3 straight away games after Thanksgiving. 2 of those teams are the 49ers and the Lions, both away. So if they do struggle away this year, then playing those 2 teams isn't going to help. All in all, a huge improvement across the whole team. They look now to be a pass-first offense with Williams. Stacked new-look offense, likely to cause trouble and, in my opinion, likely to move out of the bottom spot of NFC North. Defense was an issue to start last year, ended better than it started. They need to improve in that area before they can call themselves true contenders. So if they start the way they ended last year, that is very, very good stepping stone on where they need to be. The Bears need to improve on division head-to-head results also. 2-4 last season. No Rodgers, no problem. Even though the Bears owner, Aaron Rodgers, has gone to New York, Jordan Love continued the trend of beating the Bears. 2 wins from 2 last year. And interesting fact as well, the Bears are also they're still owned by the Packers. They've now lost 10 times in the last 10 games against Green Bay. So obviously, if they want to be a contender, they need to beat a top team like Green Bay Packers in the division to have a chance of stepping past those in the division rankings. All in all, to me, it still feels like a two-horse race between Detroit and Green Bay. But the Bears, they do have some nice stepping stones to becoming a contender in the near future. If it's not this season, I predict it could be next season. I still think there's going to be a settling-in phase before they can truly talk about contending. The Vikings look to be a bit lost, to be honest. They look to be at the back of the pack. Again, as I said before, Lions could make history winning back-to-back division titles for the first time ever. And the Packers have actually won the most division titles with 12 since 2002. So there's a lot to play for in this division. I think it is still going to be a two-horse race between Detroit and Green Bay. I mentioned that in my future bets. But I think the Bears do have a very, very good chance of contending for this division in the near future. They've got a very, very good key season for them to prove what they can do. Okay, moving to the NFC East. Again, order of the compass, or northeast. And again, in the order of the 2023 results of the standings of the NFC East, we're going to start off with the Dallas Cowboys. A very, very good season last year. Finished with a 12-5 record. Key roster moves. I would say this is quite key. They re-signed a familiar face in Mike Zimmer, defensive coordinator for the first time since 2006, and it could be a new look defense. Could be a concern, might not be, but him coming back to the Cowboys is it's a key move in my opinion. Signed Eric Kendricks, solid contributor linebacker, and that basically was a signing because Leighton Van Der Esch retired, which was a shock to everyone really, but managed to re-sign Ezekiel Elliott after a year away from the team, playing in New England last year, and that again was basically due to them moving on from Tony Pollard. Released Gallup and lost Tyron Smith as well. They did, however, manage to reconstruct Jordan Lewis and Zach Martin's contracts to gain a bit of cap space. Drafted two new players in the first three picks, in their first three picks, to address their offensive line issues, obviously to try and improve on last season. Guyton didn't allow a sack in 355 pass rush attempts last season, and I'm going to say BB only allowed 2 sacks in 1,206 pass rush attempts across 2 seasons. So 2 solid O-line additions there for the Cowboys. A problem, in my opinion, for Dallas is the contract issues with Mike McCarthy and his coaching staff to start. Dak Prescott going into his final year. CeeDee Lamb wants to be the highest paid receiver, and in my opinion, deals need to be done before they become a distraction. Dak showcased why a new contract is needed sooner rather than later, as he finished second in the MVP voting last year. He threw for 4,516 yards, 36 touchdowns. He's been given every opportunity to succeed this season, reuniting with his old friend Ezekiel Elliott. Mike McCarthy will be doing the offensive play calling, and CeeDee Lamb's just out there somewhere. CeeDee Lamb's, if he throws the ball up to CeeDee's going to make a play for him. So he's been given opportunities to succeed. Both Dak and Lamb set team records in catches and yards last season. They look to improve again, and maybe the Cowboys might then give him a new contract. A fun, interesting fact as well, staying within the division, Cowboys are 15-3 against NFC East in the last 3 seasons. So they've only lost 3 times in the last 3 seasons against NFC East, which is a huge thing for them going forward to challenge for the division. The Cowboys went 12-5 last season, and all 5 losses happened to be on the road. So they need to improve their road record. If they improve their road record, obviously statistically they could be one of the only unbeaten team in the league. Obviously that wasn't the case. A trend for the division. No team has won back-to-back NFC East titles since the Eagles did it 4 times in 2004. So statistically, in this trend, the Cowboys are not likely to win it again. That's just how it's gone for the past 20 years. In my opinion, this Dallas team needs to keep up with the aggressive offense. They had the most points in 2023, but ranked 5th worst team for tackles, bottom half of the league in run defense. So that needs to improve. There's a big contrast in offense and defense here. They haven't improved too much in terms of acquisitions or additions, trading for anyone. Drafted some players to get help on that O-line, but they need to get a deal done for CeeDee Lamb ASAP. They need him a lot more than he needs the Cowboys. So get the deal done to have a better chance of winning. Moving on to the second position from last season was the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished with an 11-6 record, and I actually backed them last year to win this division. And it came all the way down to the wire, and the Eagles actually fumbled it in the last few games. But this season, they've done a lot in their in the off season. They've done a lot of things well. So they drafted 2 of the top cornerbacks in the draft, Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Mitchell had the highest PFF grade out of all FBS cornerbacks in the last 2 seasons. And Cooper DeJean, he only allowed a 45 quarterback passer rating across the last 2 seasons. Unfortunate thing is Cooper DeJean has suffered a major injury in training camp, so he's going to be lost for a certain amount of time, which is obviously a huge loss considering they had a lot of hope for him in this team. They lost Kevin Byard, but it's not really a huge loss. He didn't impact the team the way they thought he was going to, but a huge loss also is Jason Kelce retiring. He was one of the best players to play at that centre role, so that'd be a huge loss for them next year. Moved on from DeAndre Swift, but they did manage to add Saquon Barkley. Philly believe there's more upside to Barkley's game that only they can unlock. A key reason why they brought him in, despite him being in his 7th year. He can be used in the passing game as well, so he's dual threat. So there's a lot of ways that they can implement Saquon Barkley into this team. They also welcomed back Gardner Johnson. Funnily enough, he actually performed his best. He had his career year while he was in Philly, so getting him back, hoping he can replicate that form again. And they also added Devin White and Devontae Parker as well for a little bit of depth in those positions too, linebacker and wide receiver. So all in all, additions sort of outweighed the losses. I wouldn't say outweighed. Losing Jason Kelce is a huge loss, but they managed to add a lot of players and keep parts where they struggled last season. So some small roster issues, reshuffling is obviously needed after Jason Kelce retiring. Jurgens does move to centre. He has had experience there before, so it was a pretty natural transition from right guard to centre, but there is now a void in right guard. Like I said, Cooper DeJean is out. Eagle had huge plans with Slay, Bradbury, Mitchell and DeJean, and now they're going to have to reevaluate DeJean's replacement. C.J. Gardner-Johnson could step in. Eagles had some issues during the end of the last season. Finished with the 7th best points per game average of 25.5, but that dropped to 16 points per game in the last 7 games, and they actually went 1-6 in the last 7 games. That's another reason why they lost the division last year. They couldn't close out the season. They had that wrapped as well. They had a very, very good season, and they went 1-6, only scoring 16 on average. Huge fumble of the bag there. Eagles ranked 30th in points allowed. They addressed the key needs for that with their draft picks. Adding players into the secondary, which was a huge reason why they allowed the second most points in the league last year. An upside to last season, Eagles have gone 13-4 in home games over the last 2 seasons. So they've only lost 4 home games in the last 2 seasons. The schedule this year actually sees them end in the regular season with 4 games at home. I think they're one of the only teams that have that many in a row during the course of the season, never mind in the last 4. So if it does come down to the end of the season like it did last year, having 4 home games for them is huge. I think the Eagles have done a lot more to improve their team than the Dallas team. The Eagles' offense looks scary. They've got potentially 3 players that could all go over 1,000 yards. Barkley, AJ Brown. You've got a lot of new additions on defense as well. That's on the up. And despite some squad reshuffling, I think they look like they're a solid contender. I think look out for Philadelphia Eagles this season. 3rd place, New York Giants had a 6-11 record last year. Obviously not the best. They had a huge issue last year with Dan Jones, so they managed to trade for Brian Burns to play alongside Dexter Lawrence and Thibodeau as well to try and form a sacking trio. A fierce pass rush full of sacks. Burns has a 20.2 pass rush win rate over the last season, so he's always in the vicinity of the quarterback, which is a good thing for this new look Giants defense. They did lose Saquon Barkley, which is a huge downgrade to their running back room. They added Singletary, who has joined up with, I think, the offensive coordinator from a few years back that he's used to playing with. Darren Waller also retired, so they didn't manage to get a decent replacement for Barkley or Waller. They did, however, draft a new wide receiver 1 and a top safety prospect after losing Xavier McKinney. So the safety, Newbin, he had a career best 90.1 coverage grade in 2023. That was the first among Power 5 safeties. He allowed a 33 quarterback passer rating between 2021 and 2023, so a huge addition in the safety position. Losing Xavier McKinney, who was first in coverage grade last year, it's pretty much a like for like in terms of skill and talent, things like that. So they managed to address that need. Malik Neighbors, he led the nation with 127 yards per game on average. He finished first in the SEC for receptions and yards, the number 2 in the league for touchdowns as well, in the league, not the SEC, in the league. So his production last year was very, very good. He also ended his LSU career as the school's all-time reception leader and receiving yard leader, which is huge when you think about all of the names that have come out of that school. Obviously Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, to name a few. So he's up there with that sort of caliber of player. Hopefully Dan Jones can find him enough to make an impact on this team. A downside for me is that the Giants didn't move on from Dan Jones. In my opinion, they need to. I don't think he's an elite quarterback he's not the face of the franchise. So they did, however, prepare for a potential quarterback change. They added Drew Lock if they need him. So having a solid sort of backup just in case Dan Jones does go down with an injury or doesn't perform as well, they've got someone who can step in. He's had a bit of experience in the league before, so that, in my opinion, that's a good addition to have that just in case. Last season, they had a bottom 4 offense in scoring and in yardage. Neighbors brought in to help with that area. Defensively, they were a bottom 7 defense in yards allowed and points allowed, but they brought in Brian Burns to help with that. So again, they got 2 players that could turn up the ante a little bit on offense and defense. However, the Giants do have the 6th toughest schedule, and they could face very, very early embarrassment as starting from week 3, they face 5 teams who finished above .500 last season. If they lose the majority of those opening 8 games, their season could be over before even the halfway mark. So they need to have a good start to the season to improve on last year first and foremost. But I think it's a tough task to ask this Giants team to contend. In my opinion, they look like a 5 and 6 win team rather than a sort of an 8 or 9 win team. I think they're a similar, if not worse, than last year after losing key players like Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. Darren Waller retired as well. He didn't really get the best out of him last year, but having him retired didn't help also. So it's a lot of pressure to put on Malik Neighbors to carry an offense that's run by Dan Jones. He's not an elite quarterback. They lost Barkley, as I said. That also doesn't help. So everything being on Neighbors' shoulders, I think he's a very, very good player. I just don't think he's in the right team or with the right quarterback. So it's a shame for him that he's going to suffer a little bit, I think, next year. Defensively improved. They added players in positions they struggled with last year. Again, despite losing star Xavier McKinney, they added Newman as well. So like for like in those sort of defensive areas. And but yeah, I don't think they're good enough to contend next year. Finally, in this division, Washington Commanders, another team who I'm not expecting much of. 4 and 13 last year. Sam Howell was replaced. In fact, the whole team was replaced. Whole new ownership, whole new front office, whole new coaching staff, and it was very much needed. Added a ton of new players also. Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Beer Disease on offense. Armstrong had 9 sacks. Luvu had 84 solo tackles. Ferrell and Chin as well also added to boost their defense, and I think those 4 alone can boost what they did last year. Drafted Daniels at quarterback, nice dual threat, quarterback who ranked as the 3rd highest quarterback prospect. Gave Commanders a new identity, and he could potentially be the face of the franchise as well. Added more key pieces and addressed a lot of needs in all over the field really. PFF actually graded their draft as an A, one of the highest in the league last year. Not much really to say on this team in my opinion. So basically a new whole team, obviously like I said, whole new staff, backroom staff, front office, coaching staff, ownership, everything all new. Luvu partners Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field. Austin Eckler partners Robinson Jr. At running back, and Armstrong will improve their pass rush. They've added some solid duos now across both sides of the ball. It could be a good thing. With so many new faces, though, it may take time to adapt and to bond together. There will be a settling in phase, I think, for all these players to get used to each other. It's a full rebuild. It's been done well. Added a lot of new players in key areas, new backroom staff, blah blah blah. In my opinion, they could and they should improve on last year. They've got all the tools. They also get a week 14 bye, while they also play 3 teams that missed the playoffs in December. So that month of December could be their best chance to stack some wins. Last year they did, however, not win against any NFC East opponents. So obviously that needs to improve. 0-6 isn't good enough. If they want to sort of not even contend, I don't think they'll contend this year, but if they want to improve on last year, they're going to have to win some games within this division first. And obviously in the month of December, that could be their best chance to stack a few wins together. So all in all, a little recap of the of the NFC East. I think it's a very similar situation to the NFC North. It looks like a two-horse race, but unlike the NFC North, I don't think we get back-to-back winners. It's obviously going to be led by Dallas and Philadelphia. Commanders are in a very similar situation to the Bears. They've got some nice stepping stones and are heading in the right direction for the future. And the Giants are looking very similar to the Vikings. They're looking like they're going fall to the bottom of the division, in my opinion. Fun fact is 6 of the last 7 years have been dominated by the Eagles and the Cowboys. They've actually taken it in turns every other year to win the division. We've not seen a back-to-back division winner since the Eagles in 2004. I believe the trend continues this year, and I believe the Eagles will win this division. They look like the better team, most improved team. They did most in the off-season, and I think they're a contender to win this division. Okay, moving on to the bottom of the compass now, NFC South. Starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who finished top of the NFC South last year, 9-8 record. Not going to blow your mind away. 9-8, solid, above average team. Priority in their off season was to re-sign key players. Re-signed Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Lavonte David, Antoine Winfield Jr. They kept the core offense and defense together, and that's sort of the way they wanted to go this season. They wanted to keep the main focus in-house, Mayfield and Evans, obviously, and David and Winfield Jr. to keep that solidification within the team. Only important players allowed to leave was Devin White and Carlton Davis. Devin White, obviously, he's sort of declined in the past few years. Carlton Davis should be a bit of a miss moving to the Lions. Also Ryan Jansen as well, retired at centre. Pretty much expected after Tom Brady leaving a few years ago, so nothing big, no big news in that one. Drafted a replacement for Jansen though in tackle Barton. He's had experience at centre, so it's not a whole new positional move for Barton, but he did rank as the 5th best tackle over the last 2 years among FBS tackles. Drafted Braswell to help replace White. He led the SEC in pressures in 2023, so it might be a nice partnership there for Lavonte David. And then added depth in key positions. Drafted Bucky Irvin at running back. 2 new receivers and an offensive lineman as well. So they had a solid off-season in the draft. Defensive tackle area, however, was not improved. In 2023, only one player that is still on the team now recorded over 5 sacks, and that was Yaya Diaby with 7.5. Still finished in the top 10 for rushing defense. The Bucs will play 4 conference title winners from 2023 within the first 10 weeks. 3 of those will be back-to-back. So they actually play the Lions in week 2, Ravens in 3. The Lions in week 2, the Ravens in week 7, Chiefs in week 8, and 49ers in week 9. So that could be a tough stretch for those Buccaneers in the first 10 weeks. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they helped Baker Mayfield get career highs in yards and touchdowns last year, so that's a good improvement for Baker Mayfield, and obviously to keep Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is going to be a familiarity for Baker Mayfield, which is a good thing. The Bucs haven't missed the playoffs since 2019. They've actually won 3 division titles 3 years straight. And the Bucs are 18-19, including the playoffs in the last 2 seasons. So they're in a very, very comfortably easy division kind of thing. So playing in a noticeably weaker division benefits Tampa Bay. Statistically, have the joint 3rd easiest schedule as well, despite playing 4 division winners in close proximity towards the beginning of the season. Well, middle of the season, week 7, 8, 9. They finished the season with 2 home games, which could be crucial if the division's tight. home field advantage could seal the deal for Tampa Bay next year. Second place was New Orleans Saints, who actually had the same win record in 9 and 8. The Saints, however, they lost Michael Thomas and they lost Ramczyk as well, who is going to be out for the season. Added Chase Young, added Willie Gay, extended Tyrann Mathieu as well. So three good sort of additions and extensions there. Replaced Jameis Winston with a 5th round draft pick in Spencer Rattler, and that's basically to develop him behind Derek Carr for the next few years. Drafted Fuega to address tackle position. He was actually graded a 90.9 rating by PFF last season. They drafted the top 3 ranked cornerback prospect, Kool-Aid McKinstry, to address their cornerback needs. Played over 800 snaps for Alabama. He gained an 80 plus PFF rating in both 2022 and 23 seasons. So they got themselves a very, very good cornerback there. On the flip side of Tampa playing 2 home games to finish the season, the Saints actually play at Lambeau against the Packers on Monday Night Football in Week 17. An indoor team like New Orleans could struggle in the cold. You know, like I said with Tampa Bay, the division race could end. It could be decided in the final weeks. The Saints went 4-2 last season against the NFC South teams. But like I said, playing the Packers, Week 17 could be crucial to this division. If they lose that game, you know, that could be the nail in the coffin for them for the division title. They haven't been to the playoffs since Drew Brees. And to be honest, the team hasn't really improved since he left. Contract issues for Alvin Kamara at the moment, shadows his talent. He's been putting all sorts of tweets and things like that all over Twitter and Instagram and things like that. So that's overshadowing his talent and his contribution to the team this year. Michael Thomas leaving, Ramczyk injury, among other things, it's potentially setting him up for a decline. Only positive thing for the Saints heading into the season is the Saints have the easiest schedule, playing 9 games with teams who finish under .500. So if you're looking at it statistically, they could have an easier sort of route this season, but the way their team has handled their business and things like that, it isn't looking good for the Saints, to be honest. So we're not looking for them to go sort of any better than last season. I think they're going to decline quite rapidly. For the Atlanta Falcons, they finished 7-10, so not too far behind, 2 games off the top 2. They probably made one of the biggest off-season acquisitions, signing Kirk Cousins for 4 years on a contract worth $180 million. To add to that, they added Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore for depth at wide receiver. Darnell Mooney to team with Drake London, Rondale Moore probably wide receiver 3, so 3 pretty solid. Drake London's obviously a very, very good receiver, as is Darnell Mooney. Rondale Moore is, you know, sort of still up and coming, but he's a very, very good receiver in his own right as well. So a good little receiving core for Kirk Cousins. Did, however, lose Calais Campbell to the Finns, and they lost Bud Dupree as well. Looks like they addressed offensive worries. Again, signed Kirk Cousins, brought in Rondale Moore, Darnell Mooney to play with Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and you know that should improve their offense, as they were rated the 7th worst offense last season. Didn't, however, address defensive issues with any big signings. Had big defensive needs before the draft. After losing Campbell and Bud Dupree, they both led the team they both led the team for sacks last season with 6.5 each. Now, starting defensive linemen had 14 sacks combined from the last season. So those 2 players had 13 between the 2 of them, and now their whole front 4 only has 14 combined from last year, which obviously isn't good. They haven't got that one or 2 pairing or one individual pass rusher to get to that quarterback to help improve that number. they actually opted for Penix Jr. to sit and learn as a backup to Kirk Cousins instead of drafting a top defensive player. They did have a top 10 draft pick as well, so they could have got themselves one of the best players in the draft on offense or defense, and they decided to go for a backup quarterback for the next sort of 4 years at least, as Kirk Cousins is under contract for 4 years. Atlanta started 3-0 against the NFC South opponents last year, and then lost the remaining 3. They ended 3-3 in total. Started off well. They need to continue that throughout the season to be able to contend. Unfortunately for Atlanta, they start the year playing 3 playoff teams from last year: the Steelers, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. But on the flip side, between weeks 3 and 9, they play 5 home games, and they play all 3 other NFC South teams within those 5 home games. They also ended the season last year they also end this season, with 8 straight games against teams who didn't make the playoffs. They also have the weakest schedule, and they could potentially get hot down the stretch as the season ends. With those 8 games against teams that didn't make the playoffs, they could make a push to challenge. Falcons, they have 6 straight seasons below .500, and 5 of those seasons ended with 7 wins, including 3 straight, so they're consistently around 7 wins. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, Mooney, those sort of players they've added have been brought in to help their offense, and offensively they should improve with Cousins and etc. He's clearly an upgrade from Desmond Ridder last season, but defensively they looked bad last year. They couldn't rush the passer. Wow, that's hard to say. Or defend the pass. They actually ranked 27th in pressure grade, and in the last and lost 2 of last season's best on the team for pressure and get to the quarterback. And they also ranked 25th in coverage grade as well. So defensively, looking very, very well. They haven't improved. They look just as bad as last year. Offensively should improve, but is that enough to get them challenging? I'm not sure. I'm going to actually say they go for 7 wins again this year. I'm going to say offensively they get help with Kirk Cousins and co, and they get another 7 win season. And finally, onto the Carolina Panthers, who were terrible last year. Let's just not beat around the bush. They were terrible. 2-15 record. Off season, they lost a lot of key members. Moved on from Frank Wright, head coach. Lost Louvu as well. Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin, Hayden Hurst, and that's just a few. So they lost a lot of key figures on the sideline and on the field. Did, however, manage to add Jadeveon Clowney. Hasn't played his best football in the past few seasons, but if he can get back to sort of his level, that will be a key signing. Added 2 new guards for depth as well. Drafted a new wide receiver to pair with new addition in Johnson and also Adam Thielen. Drafted Brooks coming back from a torn ACL. He ranked 4th among Power 5 running backs. He's still likely to miss a little bit of time, but when he gets back healthy, he will be an improvement to this team with Chuba Hubbard as well. They drafted a lot more players for depth in a lot of positions they needed it. So last season they ranked as the worst offense, and the 4th worst defense. Not much change in the off-season, not looking like the challenge this year or even next. I think their goal this year is just to better last season's result and build on from there. They're the only team in the NFL to end on 2 road games this year. They have the 4th hardest schedule as well, which doesn't help. Those two final road games as well are both against divisional rivals. and obviously the Panthers didn't do well last year. They actually didn't win a game on the road as well, so ending with 2 road games against divisional opponents after going 0-9, not looking good. So there isn't much to say about the Panthers, I don't think, this year. So to recap this division, I think all 3 teams minus the Panthers could potentially contend for the division. It's a very closely fought division, has been for many years. At least 3 teams having 7 or more wins in 8 of the last 10 seasons. Tampa and New Orleans have dominated the last 7 years. Could see a similar result again, even though the Falcons will potentially be in the hunt. I'm going to say potentially. I'm not going to say they will be. I'm going to say they have the potential to get there with their new offense. Division could be any one of those 3 teams for the taking, and it could come down to basically who wants it more. I'm gonna say again, I think the Falcons get 7 wins. I think it's out of the Bucs and Saints, but I think the Bucs just sneak it again this year. Adding on to that as well, just had a notification on my phone. Tristan Wirfs has just signed an extension for the Bucs as well. That's obviously huge. So where is it? There it is. 3-time Pro Bowler, offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs reached an agreement on a 5-year, $140 million agreement, which makes him the highest paid in the league. That is obviously a huge addition, a huge extension as well. So I think the Bucs just scrape it as well, not just because of that, but I think they potentially have the best team in this division. And finally, we're at the end of the compass. We're on the NFC West. Obviously starting off with the team that won this division last year, San Francisco 49ers, 12-5 record. Key roster move for the offseason for them. Extended Christian McCaffrey for 2 additional years. That's huge. We'll talk about him in a little bit anyway, as I get further into this one. But that is huge. Added Leonard Floyd as well after losing Armstead and Chase Young. Leonard Floyd, we'll talk about him as well. Drafted a wide receiver in the first round with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Trade rumours picking up steam. Ayuk requested a trade. 49ers said he's not leaving, so that's a bit of controversy there. So they drafted a wide receiver 1 in the first round to pair with both anyway if they do stay. If not, to replace one of them if they do go. So Greenlaw remains out from injury. He's going to miss time. Trent Williams hasn't yet reported to training camp. He's looking for a new deal as well. There's a lot of contract issues going on before in the off-season. And to be honest, it feels like a very, very similar 49ers team. Again, Leonard Floyd, 10 plus sacks last year. So adding a 10 plus sack player to pair with Nick Bosa is a huge improvement on defense. It should again boost defensive rankings to the top. They ranked as a top 5 defense last year. Expect a similar result, maybe even higher when you've got 2 10 sack players coming at your quarterback. Last season, the 49ers had 11 wins by 10 or more points. They ranked as the top offensive team last season, and in my opinion, to keep that going, they need to keep Brandon Ayuk. Again, they're adamant on keeping him, so hopefully they do keep him for 49ers' sake and for football fans in general. To see this team stick together would be good football to watch. So 11 wins by 10 or more points. They absolutely demolished a lot of teams they played. Well, they only had 12 wins, so 11 of those were 10 plus point wins, which is huge. 49ers do, however, play 11 games against winning teams from last season. While playing similar games during last season, they went 5-2 with Brock Purdy playing. So they're used to playing sort of winning teams. They're used to playing top-end, high-level teams, and they've shown that they can cope with it. So if San Francisco managed to work things out with Brandon Ayuk, Williams, Deebo, they shouldn't have many issues with taking this division, making another lengthy playoff push. I expect both sides of the ball to remain solid, like we've seen in recent years. Los Angeles Rams, they came second last year. They had a 10-7 record. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I think the LA Rams are going to be a little bit sneaky. Obviously, the huge news was Aaron Donald announced his retirement. That's a huge factor to add into any sort of thought or opinion you have on this Rams team. They did add Jonah Jackson, Tre'Davious White, Darius Williams, Cameron Carl, all to help solidify pass protection and their defensive secondary unit. They drafted 2 players in attempt to replace Aaron Donald. Both players played for Florida State last year. Verse ranked second among Power 5 edge rushers in pass rush win rate, and also they selected his teammate from Florida State, Fisk, as well. That's obviously to help fill the void left from Aaron Donald. Drafted Blake Corum to help Kyren Williams in the backfield. Blake Corum is my guy, Michigan guy. 27 total touchdowns last year, earned an 83.4 rush grade from last season. Absolutely phenomenal athlete. Kyren Williams, obviously a phenomenal athlete as well as a double-headed monster in the backfield there. Drafted a few more pieces to solidify defense. Davis's 91 PFF grade from the last 2 seasons was 3rd best among interior defenders within this draft. So they got a very, very good defender there in Davis. Jackson, he managed 83 pressures and 16 sacks in the last 2 years. Kinchins as well, ranked 5th best safety in all of college in 2022. So they got 3 players there that have produced some solid numbers, and they've added a lot of new pieces in key defensive areas. They've obviously focused on the defense. A lot of the emphasis on the replacement of Aaron Donald and his production now being lost, obviously, with him leaving. So they've focused on trying to replicate the Aaron Donald production with a few new draft picks. Also revamped the secondary, which allowed the 10th most passing yards to opponents last year. Rams offense will most likely rely on 2 sets of duos, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. Scary looking combinations on both areas of the field. Williams rushed for 1,112 games last year. He's going to be fully fit to start the year, so expect another 1,000-yard plus year. Puka Nacua setting rookie records last season, and Cooper Kupp being the best receiver in football in 2021 before injuries in 22 and 23. So if he can get back to his 21 form, pairing him with Puka Nacua, that's a scary thing, and it's a very, very good thing for Matt Stafford. The Rams dropped very, very lucky with the schedule. They have the whole of October in LA, 3 home games, and they have a bye week as well. So the whole month of October in LA, so they don't have to travel. It's a good home streak there. They went 5-1 last year against NFC West opponents. Eventually, that's what helped them make the playoffs. Offensively, they look very dangerous on paper. Improved offensive line. Run game has improved from 22 to 23. I expect it to improve again this year. Stafford could potentially be up there in the MVP voting if Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua both stay healthy. Continue the form from Puka Nacua last year and Cooper Kupp from 2021. Again, Matt Stafford could be up there in the MVP voting. Defense definitely has potential. It should generate sacks despite being a young group added. Those 2 players trying to replicate Aaron Donald's production. We'll see how that goes. We'll pencil that in. Secondary also been adapted after a mediocre season last year. They could potentially push the 49ers all the way. It wouldn't surprise me to see them up there with San Francisco. It wouldn't surprise me seeing them back in the playoffs as well. So the Rams looking like a strong season, a strong team after a good off season. Seattle Seahawks, third last year, 9-8 record. Again, the trend of this division being very, very close near the top. 12-win team, 10-win team, and a 9-win team, all over .500. Seattle Seahawks, they lost more people than they added. They moved on from Pete Carroll after a bad season last year. Well, didn't make the playoffs last year. They lost Bobby Wagner. They lost Jordan Brooks. They lost Damian Lewis, and that's just a few. Managed to keep all main offensive skill players. DK, Tyler Lockett, Walker playing running back. So they managed to keep those sort of players together, which is going to be a good thing to try and keep some momentum going with Geno Smith as well. They did re-sign defensive end Leonard Williams, which is obviously another good thing as well. We'll talk about him again in a minute. They drafted one of the best defensive players in the draft. Murphy, since 2021, he ranks third among all defensive tackles with a 12% pressure rate. They added run blocker Haynes. He had 89 run block grade in 2023. Obvious move to improve the 6th worst rushing offense last year. Also drafted, I'm going to attempt this one. Also drafted Luamea, who didn't allow a single sack in 2023 at right tackle. He's predicted though to move to guard. He's had experience there, so it should be a pretty smooth transition over. Drafted 2 new cornerbacks. Pritchett allowed just 12 catches in 2023, which ranked first out of all SEC cornerbacks. And James posted a 91 PFF grade, ranked third out of all Power 5 cornerbacks. Also forced 24 incompletions, which ranked fourth in the Power 5 as well. So 2 decent cornerbacks there to improve obviously their cornerback positions. Obvious emphasis on improving the defense. Added Murphy with Williams. That's an obvious upgrade. 2 new corners with aggressive skill set creates a lot of depth in secondary. Keeping the offensive core, adding 2 new offensive linemen to protect Geno, to help the run game with Walker. Again, keeping the same skill players is a good thing to have that sort of consistency as well. Struggled against NFC West opponents last year, went 2-4 against NFC West. Both wins actually against the Cardinals, who had a bad season last year. So the Cardinals should actually improve this year. It might not be a good thing for the Seahawks in the division battle if they can't beat last year's worst team. They could potentially be the last team. The Seahawks, they have the 4th hardest schedule. They face the 49ers twice, the Bills and the Rams all in a 5-week span. So that could be a tough little part of the schedule there for them to navigate. Offensively, looking strong. Those additions to help improve the run game. It's the defense that gives me the worry. They lost 2 of their top 3 tacklers from last year. Obviously, Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. Losing those 2 and not replacing them isn't really setting themselves up for a good season. I don't expect them to push for the division this year. And with that, we'll move on to the final team in the NFC, and the NFC West, and the Arizona Cardinals. 4-13 last year. This one, it feels like a roster move, even though it's not. But they get a healthy Kyler Murray back again. He's got the potential to be great. They signed Desmond Ridder as a backup, just in case Kyler suffers another injury. You know, he's I wouldn't say he's what's the word? He can pick up an injury. Let's just put it that way. So having Desmond Ridder there just in case is a good thing so far. They signed Jonah Williams to improve their offensive line. Signed Murphy Bunting as well to improve the secondary. Signed Zay Jones to add another passing option for Kyler Murray. And talking about passing options for Kyler Murray, they drafted the top prospect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be wide receiver 1 for Kyler Murray. Last season, Harrison had the last 2 seasons, he's had back-to-back 1,200 plus receiving yard seasons, and he's also had back-to-back 14 touchdown seasons as well. Obviously, a great addition to their offense. Wide receiver 1 off the bat. Him and Kyler Murray should, improve this team, already. Added 2 solid defensive players. Robinson can play interior and on the edge. He had a career high PFF rating with 83. He had 9 sacks. Melton will play the opposite side to Murphy Bunting. He allowed opposing quarterback rating of just 65 while being targeted. In the draft, the Cards had a total of 12 players drafted to help with depth in key positions. Added draft players who would apply pressure to current starters. One of those being Benson as well, who could compete with James Conner for touches in the running back position. So a lot of decent draft options there for the Cardinals. Addressed a lot of key needs. Added players in position that needed work in both offense and defense. Cardinals, they were bottom 10. They were bottom 10 defense last year. They ranked last in run defense and second worst in points per game average allowed. And that in turn, overall, they were bottom 10 defense too. So bottom 10 offense, bottom 10 defense. The Cardinals face 5 playoff teams from the last season, the first 6 games. They also end the season against the 49ers, the Rams, but the middle of the season is winnable. If they don't win a few of those first 5 games, their season could be over before they even reach halfway point. Where are we? They started last season 1-8 without Kyler Murray. They went 2-5 in 1-score games. So, an improvement for them is they need to close out games to have a chance. They went 0-6 against divisional opponents, didn't win 1 last year, and they've actually only won 1 against divisional opponents in the last 2 years. So, again, another improvement is when they face divisional opponents, they need to win. That's plain and simple. Cardinals, they took steps in improving the team. I don't think they have enough to contend just yet. New additions on offense could see them enter the top 10 offense this year. Potentially with Benson and Marvin Harrison Jr., Zay Jones, Kyler Murray being healthy as well. It has potential to get to the top 10. They didn't improve much in the pass rush. Cardinals front 4 combined for 14 sacks last year. The highest for one player was just 4.5. So they haven't got that one pass rush player capable of getting 10 sacks on his own. Cardinals ranked 3rd worst in sacks per game average last season. Again, they haven't improved that. They should, however, improve on last season's record, but I don't think it's enough to push for the division or the playoffs. And to put into perspective, this whole NFC West, it could have a similar competitive feel as the last few seasons. 6 years running, the NFC West has had 2 or more teams reach the playoffs. 5 times in the last 8 years, 3 teams have been .500 or higher. So it's consistently had those 2 or 3 teams pushing for the playoffs, pushing for the division, having positive record. 49ers, they're the heaviest favourite from any team to win their division this year. but I do, however, believe the Rams could cause an upset. With the 49ers having the most consistent team, they haven't changed much. They've added a few players. They're a group who know how to win. All the other three teams making a lot of new additions, or losing a lot of key figures, i.e. the Rams and Aaron Donald. The 49ers look in prime position to win this division and get the three-peat, win 3 times in a row. The 49ers have the chance to win 3 times in a row for the first time since the Seahawks did it in 2007. And there it is. There's my breakdown of the NFC, division by division, NFC North, East, South and West. Went through all the teams, all their sort of roster moves during the off-season, both draft picks and trades, people they've lost, key additions on offense, defense, backroom staff, coaching staff, everything. Went through some fact findings that I found during my research and things like that, which I believe are actually quite crucial when you look into some of the things. Some of the things I found. So again, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that made the end of this one. So it was another long one. I believe necessary, though. I believe it was a good one for information gained, information shared, and yeah, I want to thank everyone. Appreciate everyone for making it this far. Again, I would really love it if you leave this a good review. Drop me a follow so you don't miss any other episodes I post. I'm going to be posting another one this time next week for the AFC division, AFC conference, going through all the AFC teams, divisions. Same again. And yeah, if you can drop me a follow on all socials, Twitter, TikTok, obviously Spotify. You can find me at Elite Wages. Peep the logo to make sure it's me, not an imposter. No. And yeah, I appreciate everyone for allowing me to do this and allowing me to share this information and hopefully open people's eyes to a wider insight on certain teams, not just sort of the head of the league, the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. It's not just going to be as simple as that this year. So yeah, hopefully it's information gained, information shared, and again, thank you. Next week's episode, AFC conference. Share, like, tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.